Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, man. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, man, you guys know the deal on this channel. It's all about setting the record straight, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, stopping them from rewriting history, guys. And in this video, I want to do a video on Anthony Mason. Once again, rest in peace to Anthony Mason. I want to do a video on Anthony Mason. You guys know that, every once in a while I try to hit you guys with, different videos of different players that played in the, the golden era of the 80s and the 90s, man. And, I try to give you guys some information on some of these players and what I remember, from them watching them growing up, man. And I've done videos on guys like Brad Daugherty and, Muggsy Bogues and Mark Jackson. I've done videos on, different kinds of players that played in the eras, right? Some of these guys can say that we forgot about Kevin Johnson, right? We forgot about these guys. And in this video, we want to focus on Anthony Mason, man. The guy who had the body of a power forward, right? But had the dribbling ability, the handles of a guard. Anthony Mason, a really unique player in that era of NBA. And they always try to tell us that these guys had no skills. There were no skilled men, skilled players back in the 80s and the 90s, some of these other eras. And Anthony Mason had skills, man. And we're going to talk about in this video. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world, everyone across the states has been supporting my channel, guys. Once again, I am truly, truly humbled by all the support, man. It really means a lot, guys. Thank you very much to everyone who comes through all the time, man. And like I said, you guys come through the live shows and you're always showing support, man. Thank you very much, guys. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, man, I wanted to do a video on Anthony Mason, man. Shout out to Anthony Mason. Rest in peace to Anthony Mason. Died some years back. Died very young. But shout out to Anthony Mason and his family. Everyone, the fans of Anthony Mason, all the New York Knicks fans out there, or the Charlotte Hornet fans that remember Anthony Mason from the Charlotte Hornets, or I think he played a year in Miami. He played for a couple of teams, right? And Anthony Mason, he really didn't come into his own until he came to the New York Knicks. Now, I believe he went to the New York Knicks. I believe it was his third season, if I remember correctly. I think he came from the Denver Nuggets. I can't remember what team he came from, but Anthony Mason really started to make a name for himself when he came to New York Knicks, right? And I believe his first year on the Knicks, I want to say is 1992, maybe, guys. I want to say that was his first season on the New York Knicks. And he was part of the, the core for the New York Knicks. You had guys like Patrick Ewing, obviously, right? You had the Charles Oakleys, right? You had the John Starkses. You have an Anthony Mason. These were like the core players for the New York Knicks in the early, mid to late 90s, right? Those were the guys, right? And they would build in and, bring guys in and off their lineup or the roster over those years. You had guys like Kiki Vandeweghe and Mark Jackson, right? Charles Smith, Xavier McDaniel, right? These are different players that were on the team. Trent Tucker, I remember being on the team. These are some of the guys that were on the New York Knicks. And Anthony Mason became a key member of the New York Knicks team that became a very formidable team in the 90s, defensively, one of the great defensive teams of that era of all time to me. They were very well coached. Pat Riley was the head coach, and then later on, Jeff Van Gundy. But they were a very good team, man, the New York Knicks. And Anthony Mason was one of the key members of those New York Knicks teams. And, a lot of times when we talk about or when we hear people try to tear down the players of the past, and we're talking about the 80s and the 90s, guys, more specifically the 90s here, they try to tell you guys that, they didn't have any skills, right? These guys were not skilled players. There were no skilled guys. The guys today are more skilled, right? We've heard someone like Anthony Edwards say something like, oh, the only skilled player back then was Michael Jordan. Really, Michael Jordan was the only skilled guy in the NBA back then. Meanwhile, you have people today, right, or over the last 10 years or so, seeking out Hakeem Olajuwon and his expertise. But Michael Jordan's the only skilled player, right? These guys don't know the game. This is what we're talking about. You expose yourself when you say something like that. So when we think about someone like Anthony Mason, and I was watching the 1992 Eastern Conference semifinals between the Chicago Bulls and the New York Knicks. I was watching a couple of days ago. And that's really what inspired me to do this video. Because there were a couple of scenarios there. I was in Game 7. There were a couple of different scenarios there, a couple plays there that I was like, damn, Anthony Mason got some really nice handle. And the thing about it, guys, that we talk about in relation to this era of NBA is the standard. So Anthony Mason is dribbling the basketball the way that he could dribble the ball at that. I mean, listen, Anthony Mason about what, 6'7", 6'8", somewhere around there. He's but the size of LeBron James, except stockier. Like when you look at LeBron James' weight, they list LeBron James at 6'9", I believe 240 or 250, something like that. They list him at that size. But when you look at LeBron James versus a Karl Malone, for example, who's about the same size, listed wise, they don't look the same to me. When you look at someone like Anthony Mason and you versus LeBron James size-wise, they don't look the same to me. Like Anthony Mason looked like a linebacker out there, or bigger than a linebacker, man. Like the dude was like a defensive end. He was a monster out there, man. Like I said, the dude was just, muscles on top of muscles. He looked like a bodybuilder playing basketball. The way that he could move at that size, the stockiness of Anthony Mason, incredible. Once again, showing this athleticism of these guys in the 90s, right? But they won't tell you these guys were athletic. You think about something like Muggsy Bogues and how athletic you have to be to make the NBA at that size. I mean, insane. These guys were great athletes, man. But when we talk about the skills of Anthony Mason, what I noticed is that this dude can handle the ball. And he's not carrying it. He's not traveling all over the court, right? He's not being able to get away with this stuff in that era to actually officiate to a higher standard. So when we talk about the skills of the guys today, how many power forwards could really dribble the way that Anthony Mason could dribble back in the 90s? And like I said, what would he be able to do? He would probably be able to dribble like Steph Curry in this era if he was given the ability to carry the ball like that and put his hand under the ball, right? And take 2-3 steps while he's dribbling and do all this nonsense. He would be one of the best dribblers in the NBA at 6'9", 250 pounds. Anthony Mason, like this, the dude was like a tank. So when we talk about the skills of the guys back in the day, and they'll say, oh, these guys couldn't dribble, they couldn't shoot. And I'm telling you guys, and I've given you guys examples. There were stretch fours back in the 90s. There were centers that were shooting threes. In the 90s, they just weren't shooting a billion of them. That's what it was. They were making. So back in the day, if you made 50 threes in a season, that was a lot. If you made 1 3 a game for a season and you made 82 threes, let's say, in a season, that's a lot back in the day, man. Because guys were maybe taking 2 or 3 threes a game. The elite shooters, like the shooters, maybe took 5, 6, 7. I remember Dennis Scott, Vernon Maxwell. These were some of the high-volume three-point shooters of the 90s. Dan Marley, Danny Ainge. These were some of the guys that were taking a lot of three-point shots, back in them days. And it's nowhere near the amount of volume that these guys are chugging up today. So like I told you, you actually have to be better at shooting. You actually have to be more skilled back then as a big man to shoot the ball that way because you weren't going to be allowed to shoot 10 threes a game. So I told you, if you're only shooting 3 or 4, you have to make them more often. It's just the facts. How are you going to... I broke this down to you guys. If you shoot 10 threes a game, right, and you make 4 of them, you shoot 40% from the three-point line. That's respectable. That's actually really good. For the 80s and 90s, that would be elite level. To shoot 40% in the 80s and 90s is elite. But in this era of NBA, you could shoot 40% by taking 10 threes and making 4. So you missed 6 shots, then you still shot 40%. Now let's think about it in a different way. In the 80s and the 90s, if you're only taking 5 threes, you're taking half the amount of threes a game, and you want to shoot 40%, you can only miss 3 of those shots, right? You have to make 2 of them, you will be 40%, right? You guys get that? 5, 20%, we get all this, right? I'm trying to use basic numbers here. I'm not great at math either, guys. So what's harder to do? Take 10 shots, miss 6, or take 5 shots and only miss 4 of them? Miss 3 of them, guys. It's a big difference, guys, right? Half the shots that you could make. You could miss double the shots and still shoot the same percentage. So it's not the same. And like I said, that's only on 5 shots. A lot of those guys didn't even take 5 shots. They took maybe 3. So in order for you to shoot a high percentage, you got to make like 2 or 3 more often than not. You can't go 0 for 3 every night. Now guys can go 0 for 9, make 2 or 3 at the end, and finish the game 3 for 12. That's insane. That's not great shooting, but they call that skills in today's era. That's not skills. Back in the day, you get benched for nonsense like that. These guys take bad shots. They're not even taking good shots. Guys took high quality, high percentage threes back in them days because they had skills. So when you think about Anthony Mason, his dribbling ability at that size, back in them days where they officiated you more strictly, more in relation to the rules, now it's a joke. Anthony Mason has some skills at that size. The dribbling ability of Anthony Mason, man. So once again, we think about Anthony Mason, A lot of people forget this dude was sixth man of the year. Like I said, he made his claim to fame on the New York Knicks, man. Right, he was top 10 in sixth man of the year voting, like 3 or 4 years in a row. He won sixth man of the year. I can't remember what year it was. 95, I want to say it was. 95, he won sixth man of the year. And I believe in 1996 was the first time that he became a full-time starter. Because on the Knicks, he was like their, once again, he won the sixth man of the year. He was their sixth man, right? So you had the starting lineup, and then you had someone like Anthony Mason coming off the bench and giving you a really good punch off the bench because he gave you physicality, he gave you toughness, he gave you grit, he gave you rebounding. He was a really good rebounder, not a great rebounder, elite level rebounder, but he was a really good rebounder at that size, at his position, man. He averaged a double-double a couple of years there. Like I said, he has a solid playmaker, Anthony Mason. Like I said, he had that ball handling ability at that size, at that position. That like I said, I don't know if anyone dribbled better than Anthony Mason in that era at that position. He might be the best ball handler at the power forward position of that era. I mean, I could think of maybe like Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson was a great all-around player at that power forward position. Just a great athlete, man. If Larry Johnson didn't have these injuries, he was sensational, but he could dribble the basketball. I don't know if he was as good as Anthony. I mean, Anthony Mason can go between the legs. I mean, there were just things that he did. And he could do this I saw him do this on Scottie Pippen, breaking down Scottie Pippen off the dribble. So Anthony Mason had some skills, but they won't talk to you about Anthony Mason or any of these other guys as far as skills is concerned. And in 1996, like I said, when he became a full-time starter for the first time, that was, I believe, his last year in the Knicks, 96. He led the league in minutes per game. I believe he has like 42 minutes a game. And then again in 1997, when he was signed as a free agent to the Charlotte Hornets, he led the league in minutes per game again. Back-to-back years, he led the league in minutes per game. And Anthony Mason was playing a lot of games. So when we think about that, the durability of Anthony Mason and, the stamina of Anthony Mason, these guys were in good shape, man. Like, these guys didn't just look like they were in shape. They were actually in shape, these guys. Because these guys actually exercised. They actually worked out. Right? They practiced. This is what happens. So you're always going to be in shape when you're doing these things. You're showing up to work. You're practicing hard. You're taking care of your body. Right? These guys were grown men. They were professionals. So they understood what they had to do. So Anthony Mason led the league in minutes per game 2 years in a row. I believe he made an all-defensive team 1 year, I believe on the Charlotte Hornets maybe, in 97. I want to say that might have been maybe his best overall year, maybe 96, 97, somewhere around there. That's when he really started coming to his own. 94, 95, 96, 97. Made all defensive second team. I believe it was all NBA third team the same year. I think that was 1997 with the Charlotte Hornets, if I remember correctly. I believe he was a one-time All-Star. I believe he made an All-Star in 2001 with the Miami Heat. I believe he got 7 triple-doubles on his career. I didn't even realize that. Anthony Mason got 7 triple-doubles. I believe his career high in points is 31. I believe 22 rebounds is career high in rebounds. I believe 12 assists is career high in assists, which is pretty damn good. Once again, I didn't even know Anthony Mason had any triple-doubles, but he had 7 in his career. So this is, give you an idea of Anthony Mason's overall game and the skills that he had. Like I said, he could really dribble the ball really good. Solid playmaker, and like I said, a really good rebounder at that position. Nice little touch. Anthony Mason, the lefty stroke. You guys remember Anthony Mason. So once again, shout out to him. But I wrote down some names of some guys here, just to give you guys, once again, for the historical perspective, for the historical record, when they talk about these guys who are skilled. Now, I brought up some of these guys' names before. But when I told you guys that there were stretch fours in the NBA back in the 80s and the 90s, there were stretch fours. And I mentioned someone like Deadlift Shrimp all the time on this channel. Once again, shout out to Deadlift Shrimp, who was one of those guys, 6'10", small forward, power forward, that can step out there and knock the jumper down, who could put the ball on the floor. I told you, Deadlift Shrimp to me is like a precursor of Dirk Nowitzki. Except to me, Deadlift Shrimp was better ball handling and playmaking wise. To me, Deadlift Shrimp was better at putting the ball on the floor and playmaking out of it than Dirk Nowitzki. Not saying he's anywhere close to Dirk Nowitzki overall, but to me, remember, Deadlift Shrimp was a German. So I don't know if, Dirk Nowitzki was inspired by Deadlift Shrimp, but I'm sure he knew of Deadlift Shrimp. And Deadlift Shrimp's overall game, the dude was wet from the jumper, man. And like I said, he was really solid at putting the ball on the floor. Just a really good overall player, Deadlift Shrimp, man. Very underrated. But shout out to Deadlift Shrimp. He would kill in this era of NBA. He would just kill it because he'd be able to shoot 10, 11, 12 threes a game. And he'd be knocking these things down. So once again, shout out to Deadlift Shrimp, man. Sam Perkins. I've mentioned Sam Perkins many, many, many times on this channel. Sam Perkins, played with Michael Jordan in North Carolina. 6'10", stretch 4. Remember, he was on the Lakers in the 91 finals. He was on the Seattle Supersonics in the 96 finals. This is what Sam Perkins did. The lefty stroke. Right? Remember, he hit the game winner in the 91 of the 91 finals. The Bulls were winning, and Sam Perkins hit that three at the end. Wait, like 1 second left. Sam Perkins won the game for them. So Sam Perkins could just step out, stretch forward and knock these jumpers down. But they'll act like guys couldn't shoot at that size back in the day. Yes, they could. And like I said, they actually had to be more skilled back in them days. Someone like Tom Chambers who can step out beyond the line. And Tom Chambers is a really good athlete, man. Someone will see a picture of Tom Chambers, oh, it's a slow and athletic white guy. Tom Chambers will bang it on you. One of the great dunkers, of that era, Tom Chambers, man. To me, Tom Chambers is a borderline Hall of Famer. There are other guys that might get in the Hall of Fame before Tom Chambers, which is actually a laugher to me. Tom Chambers has a very good resume. But once again, he was one of the guys that 6'10", could step out and knock the jumper down. Had a really good jump shot. Tom Chambers, like I say, he'll bang it on you, man. So once again, Tom Chambers. But I remember a guy like, what was his name? What's the dude's name? I'm trying to remember his name here. Tom Gugliotta. I remember guys like Tom Gugliotta being able to step out and knock down the shots. Now, that's a little bit later in the 90s. Tom Gugliotta, when he came, if I remember correctly, he was he played with Kevin Garnett on those Minnesota Timberwolves in the late 90s, early 2000s. If I remember correctly, I could be off on that. Or maybe it was the Washington Bulls he played for. I think he played for the Wolves at one point, though. But he was a stretch four. But there were guys that had skills. These guys had skills. And then you had stretch fives. There were centers that were shooting threes. When we talk about Michael Jordan, setting the record for most threes in the first half, right, of an NBA Finals, right? He tied the record. And I've told you guys this before. Do you guys realize who he tied that record with? He tied it with Michael Cooper and Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer is 6'10" center. He's a center, guys. He played the center position. A very good rebounder. And the dude could step out and knock down the three. But he would step out and knock these shots down. Bill Laimbeer. So you had centers, the five positions, stepping out, knocking down threes. In the 90s, guys, they were doing this stuff in the 80s. They were doing this. Now, once again, they weren't doing it 10, 12, 15 threes a game, making 1 billion threes a season, but they were doing that. They were stretching the floor. They were spacing, right? They had overall games. They had skills. And some of these guys developed this stuff. So the skilled big man, like I just mentioned, Bill Laimbeer, a skilled big man, a Jack Sikma, another guy that could do multiple things on the court, who could step out behind the line, who could play, make an assist. These are skills. A Brad Lojas, who played for the Milwaukee Bucks. Another guy, a center, 6'11", whatever he was, he could step out behind the line and knock down shots. No, these are not big names. He's not a big name guy, Brad Lojas. You know what I'm saying? Not a Hall of Famer, all-time great, but this is a regular guy, role player, who could step out and make shots from that deep. Matt Bullard, who played for the Houston Rockets with Hakeem Olajuwon. He was a guy that could step out at 6'10" and knock down a three. These guys could do that, so they could pull you out to the three-point line, right? These guys did those kinds of things, right? Hakeem Olajuwon's a skilled big man. David Robinson's a skilled big man, right? Patrick Ewing is a skilled big man. I told you guys, Brad Daugherty was one of the best passing big men of that era. There were like 3-4 years consecutively that he led all centers in assists. Yes, more than Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, all of these guys. It was Brad Daugherty. He had skills, Brad Daugherty. Kevin McHale. These are skilled big men. Look at the moves of Kevin McHale. The up and unders. The pump fakes. Come on, man. He put you in the torture chamber. These are skilled big men. Skilled. Vlade Divac. He's a skilled big man. Arvydas Sabonis. Karl Malone. These are skilled big men that have skills. When we think about Danny Manning, you guys remember Danny Manning, another skilled big guy that could do multiple things on the court. These are just the fast guys. So once again, shout out to Anthony Mason. Like I said, rest in peace to Anthony Mason. The power forward, the guy who had a body of a forward, but had the handles of a guard. And like I told you, I was just watching him in the 1992 Eastern Conference semifinals versus Chicago Bulls, Game 7. And, one of the things that doesn't get mentioned much either is when we talk about Michael Jordan, and we talk about that series. And what do we often bring up? We often bring up that moment in Game 7 where Michael Jordan and Xavier McDaniel are nose to nose. They're just nose to nose, right? And Michael Jordan goes, F you, baby. F you. Like, right? That's one of the great moments. This we're talking about. This is the 90s. That's the intensity. That's the rivalry. That's what you see. Two competitors, nose to nose. Michael Jordan standing up for Scottie Pippen, being the big brother and be like, yo, man, don't be trying to bully us. Well, if you guys remember during that exchange, who else was there? Anthony Mason was right there. And if you guys remember, if you guys watched that interaction very closely, remember, this happened during a timeout or right when a timeout was getting called. So if you remember watching this live, you didn't really see it. It was kind of like you saw the replay of it. But when it happened, it was like a break in the action. But if you watch closely, right before the whole thing goes down, Michael Jordan comes over. It's Horace Grant there, Scottie Pippen, him and Xavier McDaniel. Michael Jordan comes walking over to basically, get off my dude. And then you see Anthony Mason two-hand shove Michael Jordan. He literally pushes Michael Jordan. That's Anthony Mason. That's why he was there, man. He was a scary dude. He was an enforcer out there. These guys were out there to intimidate you. These guys were hard. They boxed out. The game was physical. I remember Anthony Mason, Bulls versus Chicago. Bulls versus Chicago. The Bulls versus the Knicks. I don't know, it might have been 93, the next season, the Eastern Conference Finals. But I remember what a lot of teams used to do to Michael Jordan. They didn't just beat him up when he had the ball on offense and they were on defense. They also beat Michael Jordan up on screens. So they would run Michael Jordan through screens when he's playing defense. That's how they would beat Michael Jordan up. So like I said, when you watch him playing against guys like Reggie Miller and they're running him off all of these screens, Michael Jordan's getting beat up that way. So I was watching a game between the Knicks and the Bulls in 93, and they're doing the same thing to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is, running around, they're banging him. And I remember Michael Jordan trying to set a screen on Anthony Mason, right? Because don't make no mistakes about it, guys. Michael Jordan did all the things, all the little dirty things out there, the little things out there. He set screens, right? He moved out the basketball. And I remember Michael Jordan going to set a screen on Anthony Mason, and Anthony Mason wanted to send a message to Michael Jordan. And he just lowered his shoulder to Michael Jordan and just ran him over. Just ran him over, man, and flattened Michael Jordan out. No call, guys. No call. If I remember correctly, they might have even called Michael Jordan for an illegal screen or something like that, or a moving screen or something like that. But, I mean, he just pummeled Michael Jordan. Ran him right over. No apologies. Didn't help him up. This is where the game was played. That's Anthony Mason. That's how these guys played. So much respect to Anthony Mason. Like I said, rest in peace to him. Shout out to all the guys in the 80s and the 90s that had skills. Anthony Mason could dribble the ball, man. The dude had some skills for someone that size. He was very fleet of foot for someone that size. And like I said, in this era of NBA, how great would he be at dribbling in this era where they don't even officiate the game the right way? He was a really good ball handler in that era where they officiate the game. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.